What's good everybody? My name is Alckemy and I'd like to welcome you to the channel. If this is your first time, I have a link in the middle of the screen that has a bunch of products available for download and also purchase, and I always appreciate any kind of support that you can throw to the channel, whether it be a subscription, a membership, a like, all that stuff. So today I want to talk about something that is really important, and it's called ear fatigue. It's kind of synonymous with beat block, except the way that I would differentiate the two is that ear fatigue is more so you are making a track and you like it a lot and then you revisit it later and then suddenly you hate it. And I kind of wanted to talk about like different ways to combat that because it's really common within, our artistry. Without wanting to waste any time with this, I think that it all comes down to pacing. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, spend 8 hours a day in your DAW making tunes and all that stuff, but there is kind of like an adaptation to it to where you have to become aware of when something isn't working or when something is kind of beginning to sound kind of off or when you are kind of burning yourself out, because it happens with all of us. I do it all the time with other things outside of music, whether it be training or with, overstudying or watching too many videos on YouTube or, whatever. It's all about moderation, right? So the first actual strategy that I have for combating this is listening to the track too many times, both in the DAW and out of the DAW. It's something that I ran into yesterday while I was streaming, and oftentimes whenever we are creating and we're trying to develop an idea, we're trying to develop a vibe, the thing that we do is we continue to hit the play button over and over again, hoping that we're going to hear something different. I have a friend and she taught me about this idea in classical composition called audiating, and it's a little bit different from what I'm going to give to you today, but basically what it means is using your imagination to try to quote unquote hear other sounds or hear other parts within your tune that you have yet to write. So one way to practice that is by listening to a lot of music and trying to remember how many instruments are playing at the same time. And then by cultivating that memory, whenever you're applying a lot of these things to your tune in particular, you can kind of use that to hear multiple instruments at once. If you can only hear a drum beat, then that's the only thing that you have. And sometimes it's really difficult to do at the very beginning. And I understand that, at least for me, I have to have a certain piece or a certain amount of content for me to start hearing other things. But it's the same idea as meditation. It's the same idea as using imagination, but it's a very, very strong strategy. It's worked for me, and it's something that I love to give credit to her for, and it's something that I think that you guys should try as well. But long story short, you want to honestly just practice using your imagination as opposed to trying to hear something whenever you are playing your tune back. Even when you bounce, whenever you're doing stuff, you're really excited to make a new track, and then you throw it in your car, and then you're like, oh, how does it sound? Oh, what does it need? Oh, take notes. Oh, take notes. Oh, take notes. Well, it's the same thing. Even if you like a favorite song, if you play it too many times, you're going to end up hating it regardless of how good it is. So give yourself a little bit of reference and then take a step back and pull yourself away from that project from time to time to allow yourself to appreciate it again, because otherwise you're just going to not want to finish it. So the second thing that I have is kind of it's something that I got from Musar Music, who you guys should go check out. He streams on Twitch and he's getting his YouTube channel off the ground, but it's called kind of dummy arranging. And what that is let's say this is a blank canvas over here. You would basically just grab all of the sounds that you can think of or that you can grab, whether it be a kick or even silence for that matter, and just start arranging a track in the same way that you would without hearing it. So a lot of DAWs in particular, if you double click a section like this, maybe over here, I'm in a group, if you double click a section, then it will automatically make a clip. And so you can kind of pretend or imagine this to be something else. Rename this kick and then make a new track like this, and then rename this snare, and try to again use your imagination to hear a drum beat in your head, to hear a melody in your head. It doesn't matter what it is, and just write the track out without even listening to it, and then you can go back and replace it with samples or actually start to try to fit it closer to whatever it is that you are imagining. Because most of the time whenever we get hung up on things, at least for me, it's the sounds and stuff aren't working well together, or there's no vibe in order to catch. But if you imagine the vibe and you have the placement on timing of the grid, then that will kind of help you maybe even use this as a visual to see the idea that you have in your head as opposed to hear it. And that's it may or may not work for you, but I've found success with this in certain circumstances. I haven't personally gone as far as writing an entire track in silence, but I do see the benefit with it, and I do think that it's something worth worth exploring if you find yourself running into this problem. So the next thing that I want to talk about is sample and preset browsing, which is kind of synonymous with what I was talking about right here. For the most part, whenever I get hung up on things or whenever I start to hate something, it's because I'm listening to this track over and over again, and then when I feel like it needs something but I don't know what, it's very easy for me to start surfing for samples, or it's very easy for me to pull up a VST and start browsing through presets. To be honest, that's one of the biggest reasons why I started this channel, was because I don't like doing that. I cannot stand preset browsing. I would much rather go through all the trouble of doing my sound design, which is kind of the next thing, of doing all the sound design that I can and picking sounds that I know that I'm going to like or that I know sound good together before I start trying to execute track production. And the reason why is because if I'm looking for a sound, I might not ever find it, unless if I know all of my VSTs really well, or you have a single VST that you're just like, I know this preset is going to work. That's not really like preset surfing, right? There's a lot of things that I do that I try to hope to explore by chance, but the way that I go about that is much different than hoping that somebody else made it. Even with Omnisphere, I still find myself not finding the presets or finding the sounds that I'm hoping that it has. And then I'm just like, you know what, I'll just make it myself or go sample it off the internet or, you know, out in the wild or something. With all that, you really want to be careful of that. And I would give yourself a time limit, not like, okay, 2 minutes, go. But, you know, just be mindful of like, if you start noticing yourself spending too much time just looking for a sound, because that's going to totally kill your workflow. And then once you find the sound, you might change your mind. You might not like it anymore. And that's why a lot of people say that like doing sound design beforehand is one of the most important things in order to kind of be successful for your track. Because if, again, I say this all the time, but imagine if you have all the sounds that you want, that, you know, is everything that you need, and all you have to do is arrange. Then you can just start putting things together, and hopefully, you know, the choice flow that you will start making will come a lot more natural, which kind of brings up another point of getting into choice flow, right? What does it take in order for you to start feeling like things are natural, and where do your hangups come out? And that's something that I think that you guys should write down or start, you know, taking a mental note of, or whatever it is that you do to help yourself remember. But, you know, just being mindful of being like, all right, well, I got up to this point and now everything stops. Why? What happened right here? Why does this not work out anymore? And you know the answer. It's within all of you, you know, and sometimes it might take a little bit of critical thinking and all that, but I really believe that by building up this mindfulness, you can start to problem solve within these issues that you're running into. It's kind of an interesting thing, right? Because art is in itself, by one means or another, problem solving, but it's also expression. And once you get over the hurdle of running into problems with expression, then that's when you start accepting who you are as an artist, and you can start expressing yourself in its most truest form. That's something that comes from, you know, the martial arts side of things that I practice in, but I do believe that's true within any art that you're doing. So that's kind of the biggest things that I have for you. You know, writing your notes, don't spend too much time looking for samples, arrange stuff, and kind of don't worry about how it sounds, or even do it in silence. Don't listen to the track too much, and then kind of be aware of what you're doing as soon as something doesn't work. The last piece of advice that I have for you is during your track arrangement, write yourself a note. A lot of times whenever I'm making something and I'm getting close, as opposed to, again, going into sound design and stuff, what I sometimes do is say, all right, well, right here, there's a little bit of space. And so what I'll do is I'll hit Command R and I'll say like, add a fill right here. And even though I have nothing there, I can still use this as a means of giving myself a quick note. So that way, whenever I go back and I want to start completing the idea, then I can go back and do some sound design and try to make that fit while still continuing to work on the rest of the arrangement. And this is just a workflow tip that has kind of been really helpful to me whenever I know that something needs to be there, but maybe I don't know what. And sometimes, like with identifying rhythm and all that, that can be helpful to you all as well. So that's pretty much it. Sorry, this was kind of like a convoluted video where my thoughts were kind of scattered, but that's the whole point of these videos, is I kind of get to go off on the deep end. But I hope that you all enjoy this, and I hope that these tips and advice was helpful to you. This is something that I will be looking at, you know, in the future when I run into the same problem, because it still happens. And I will see you all in the next video.